Ego in BLUELOCK is described as one's true desire for them to accomplish their goal. This ego has led characters to performing some of the most incredible plays that we've seen in the series. But can ego be so simply explained? Well, in today's video I'm going to be covering what ego truly is within BLUELOCK, as well as how the players' egos have evolved throughout the series. Now this video is simply an explanation video. If you were looking for a theory video, this isn't it. I'm simply clarifying and explaining information that we already know into an entertaining and concise video. So don't feel the need to comment something about us already knowing all this stuff. Now before I begin, I want to leave a spoiler warning for chapter 267 of the BLUELOCK manga, and if you aren't caught up to that point in the series, I would suggest clicking off this video right now because there will be spoilers. But to begin, I think we need to address what ego truly is, and by ego, I don't mean this ego. It may get confusing, so if I am talking about this ego, I'm going to be calling him Jinpachi Ego, which is his full name, and that way no one gets confused. Now ego is fully defined as a combination of drive, confidence, skill, and selfishness that pushes someone to become the best. We see from Jinpachi Ego's explanation that only those who are insane egoists have the chance to reach the top of the world. This doesn't mean you have to be the most rude because you need to be selfish, nor does it mean you need to be overconfident. It simply means to know who you are, know what you're capable of doing, and know how to execute your abilities to their limit. We see from Jinpachi Ego's explanation that this logic is supported by those at the top of the charts in this universe, with the main contender being Noa, the current best striker in the world. This foundation for ego is the base of BLUELOCK and the BLUELOCK project itself. However, there's a lot more we need to discuss when talking about ego. The next topic being ego types. These types are identified as individualistic egos and world egos. Individualistic egos are defined as players with desire-oriented plays who discard extraneous information in pursuit of a play that makes their heart dance. And then there's world egos, which are defined as players who manipulate the important sections of the game by inputting and analyzing visual stimuli. To put it simply, those with individualistic egos draw attention after scoring goals, however world type ego players draw attention by scoring goals. Neither ego type is necessarily better than the other, it's simply relative to how their play styles are formed by their egos. This ego also translates to tactical and physical plays, as well as temperament and personality. We see the positionings of the players on a four-way graph here, based on technique, physicality, hot-headedness, and cool-headedness. This simply relates to the technicality or physicality of their plays, along with their mindset while under pressure and the effect on their playstyle. Given this chart, it's reasonable to conclude that those who lean more towards the cool and technical side of this are more likely to possess a world-type ego, while those located more towards the hot and physical side are more likely to possess an individual-type ego. Now this may appear to be confusing, but get ready, because it's going to get way more confusing. Remember how I said there were only two ego types, being individualistic and world-type egos? Well, technically there's actually four. There's still the baseline of world ego versus individualistic ego, but there's a separate aspect that we need to consider when defining an ego type. That factor is where each player best thrives in: freedom or restriction. Those who are holistic and free thrive by obtaining information and deducing multiple possible options of achieving their goal. This ego type will typically belong with someone with metavision or extreme passing abilities, such as Isagi and Hiyori. While Isagi may not possess the precision passing that Hiyori does, he himself thrives in situations where he can observe and input massive amounts of information using his metavision. This then allows him to effectively decide on the most efficient route that would lead him to the best result. And in the case of Hiyori, his metavision allows for him to create numerous situations that lead to goals through the unique style of passing he chooses to provide a player with, as we've seen how different kinds of passes can affect a play. However, if they are restricted to where they are unable to process information in time, their overall performance lowers and their skills start to drop. There are those who are individualistic and free, who perform their best by yielding to their impulses, allowing for them to play their way without any kind of limiting factors. In the case of Bachata, his dribbling meets its peak when he isn't held back by others awaiting a pass, or rather is given a situation where he can dance to his own tune. In the case of Shido, he performs at his peak when he's given the freedom to run where he wants and is given a pass that lets him do exactly what he wants to do. However, like both characters, they struggle when pressured closely by players whose intent is to restrict their movements and options, thereby limiting their weapon and effectiveness in the game. Those who are holistic and restricted are those who perform at the peak of their performance when they are placed in the underdog position. We see from Kaiser's perspective that his original ego style was that of holistic and free. However, in this most recent match, we've seen Kaiser's ego destroy and rebuild itself into a holistic and restricted ego. Having everything ripped away from him allowed for him to revert back to his core abilities as a player, giving him the ability to show the world what he is truly made of. Not simply Bastard Munchen providing Kaiser with the ability to score, but Kaiser showing everyone that he is the one who makes the impossible a reality. And when discussing those who are individualistic and restrictive, their playstyle refers to their standing during a match, showing that they thrive the best when opponents try to restrict their plays only for their opportunity to be shattered. Kunigami, for example, shows that even being a lone ambassador merchant with no allies, that his ability to stand out within an insane bunch should not be underestimated. We also see this pull true with this current lockdown of Shido, where the clear defined goal of stop Shido was given, and Kunigami has not failed once in his attempts since he began to do this. Now, given these examples, who else would fit into these four categories? For holistic and free, another character I believe fits this criteria is Mikage Ryo. Ryo's mindset fits nearly identical with the mindset of Bastard Merchant at the start of the NEL. However, instead of Kaiser, Ryo's goal is to make it easy for Nagi to score goals. We see that in several instances, Ryo himself has said that his goal is to make Nagi the #1 striker in the world. Despite the time during their breakup, Ryo has devoted himself to elevating Nagi's potential. This may not be a take that people agree with, but when Nagi is working with Ryo, he's able to create plays that far surpass anything that he could do by himself. If you want to discuss this hot take, I'll make a video about it in the future. But with everything that we've seen Ryo do and work for in the series, it stands to reason that he fits the criteria of a holistic freedom style of ego. For individualistic and free ego, this perfectly fits the ego of the king of BLUELOCK, Burū Rokku. Burū has shown that he believes to be superior on the pitch, and very rarely doubts his own skills and abilities without careful consideration. We've seen in the Ubers match how well Burū can perform when given a perfect formula, again, very similar to Kaiser at the start of the NEL. However, we've seen that this completely restricts Burū, his potential, and his abilities, with him being stopped over and over again by Isagi. This was due to him consistently sticking to the formulas and plans that Snuffy drilled into him and the rest of the Blue Lockers who chose Ubers. But we've seen that when Burū is simply given the freedom to perform how he chooses, he can easily rival or surpass that of someone like Isagi or Kaiser. Because of this, his actions lead the world to look towards Burū as a villain who stole the leading role. With this reasoning, I believe that Burū fits the criteria for an individualistic and freedom style of ego. Now, when discussing a holistic and restrictive ego, I believe the perfect candidate for this is Itoshi Sai. Now, this may not make a lot of sense given that Sai's abilities and skills require certain levels of freedom, similar to Hiyori and Isagi. However, I want you to think about more about Sai's beliefs and mindset during a game. Itoshi Sai is without a doubt a phenomenal passer and could be argued as one of the best passers in the entire series. However, what Sai truly respects about other players is getting the job done. This is why he was so disappointed in Sendo's performance at the beginning of a game, so much so that he chose to step outside of his desired zone as a player and score a goal for himself. This is also why he selected Shido to play with, as he was a striker who not only thrived upon instinct and freedom, which mirrors Sai, but also gets the job done no matter what. Sai's playstyle and abilities skyrocket when he becomes the temporary focal point. And this doesn't just apply for Sai himself, but whatever team he decides to play for. If he becomes targeted as the main threat and gets restricted, that makes the job of his strikers even easier. Sai knows that his skills are far beyond the level that anyone could be able to stop him, so he simply desires situations where several individuals try to stop him, therefore making it easier on those who are actually the bigger threat. This was shown perfectly with Aiku, as Sai baited nearly everyone's attention onto him, which gave Aiku the best possible chance for scoring. It was only due to Rin's understanding of Sai's ego and range of play that he was able to stop that attack. But we see after that it didn't happen for long, as Rin was able to predict Sai's passing course as the main focus shifted to himself and Aiku rather than Shido. Sai's entire playstyle is logical, designating himself as the role of puppet master, pulling the strings of the entire game in a way that guarantees success. So because of this, I believe that Sai is a perfect match for the holistic restrictive ego type. And lastly, when discussing individualistic restrictive ego types, I believe the perfect candidate for this is Nagi Seishiro. When looking at how Nagi functions, he functions in the exact opposite way that Ryo does. Nagi works best when given an objective from another player like Ryo or Isagi, and has been shown to be able to accomplish these goals quite easily. And when looking at his core weapon, its entirety is about individuality. Given his ability to produce insane touches using his trapping ability, this makes Nagi become more marked and pressured. This in turn makes it easier for him to create a genius level play that is just beyond what the defender was expecting, seen with his 2-stage fake volley. So because of this, I believe that Nagi fits the criteria for the individualistic restrictive ego type. Now there is a separate type of ego that isn't mentioned in this graph, which is known as a false ego. False ego is simply a false desire for a character that doesn't truly represent them as a player. Now so far in the series there are only 4 players who have shown to have a false ego, that being Bachira, Rin, Hiyori, and Kaiser. Each of these players at some point in the series had a false ego, however due to differentiating circumstances, they were able to awaken their true ego. For Bachira and Kaiser, they awakened their true ego through rebuilding. Bachira's ego became distorted when he was a child due to his isolation and loneliness. This isolation manifested his ego in the form of a monster, however this monster appeared to be dark and tainted. The monster led Bachira's thinking and plays, making him play in ways that would keep him from his loneliness. And after realizing this, Bachata chose to discard his monster, allowing for him to develop a new ego as well as a new monster. Now this monster does appear to be similar, however this new monster is brighter and appears to be more lively looking. And we see this new monster appear in the match against Bastard when Bachata demonstrates his Jenga style. And of course, when talking about his false ego, we need to address his flow state, being monster trance. While the monster that is covering Bachata in his flow state is the dark monster, the only reason for this dark monster reappearing is because Bachata is embodying his loneliness and isolation, which allows for his dribbling to reach its peak. He doesn't care if he's alone, because he knows that his skills are enough to win. For Kaiser, his ego manifested falsely in the form of thorny vines and branches. The reason for this false ego manifestation is because of the freedom granted to Kaiser by his shooting ability, as well as Bastard München. We see with chapter 267 that Kaiser thrives in restriction, and that despite this, Bastard München, or more specifically, Ness's freedom, allowed for him to grow up to this point. This is represented by his thorn aura, as given the freedom to grow, these thorny branches may become a hindrance. However, once realizing his situation thanks to Isagi, Kaiser disregards everything and returns back to zero, granting him the mindset of not being the ace striker, but simply another player who wants to show his worth. And with this ego comes the flower petals, which is actually symbolism for new beginnings. The next false ego to discuss is Rin, with him being able to awaken his true ego due to defeat. Rin was able to create this false ego by playing with Sai, allowing for his dreams, desire, and ego to become dependent on Sai. Now unlike Bachata, Rin did not simply play for Sai himself, but played so he could be someone who could stand on equal footing with his brother. However, after his abandonment of their dream, Sai told Rin to quit and give up on it as well, besting him in a one-on-one to ensure that. This defeat led Rin to develop an ego built on destroying Sai. However, this ego was also a false ego, which after his victory over Sai in the U20 match, Rin realized the true meaning of his ego, being to consider these players, such as Sai and Isagi, as stepping stones as opposed to his true goal, which allowed Rin to awaken his real ego as a player. And lastly, for Hiyori, his awakening for his true ego was due to cooperation. Hiyori's ego falsely manifested due to his parents' expectations of him, as well as the fear of the destruction of his family. However, after playing with Isagi, Hiyori was able to shatter those expectations placed upon him, allowing for him to surpass his previous self, someone who only faked the enjoyment of the game. This awakening now allows for Hiyori to draw out the top performances of other players and let them perform at levels past their previous selves, with Hiyori now being the one to set the expectations of others. Now that we've identified the different types of ego as well as the falsely manifested ego, let's take a look at the visualization of these egos and how they appear throughout the series. Let's start with the base style of ego, which is shown as this blue smoke. The beginning manifestation of a player's ego appears as this blue smoky-like aura that usually is shown to be within the eye of the player or is just surrounding them. Now there is a hot debate as to why Isagi's aura color became green instead of it being blue like it was at the beginning of the series. And the reason for that is because his ego actually evolved. Every character in the beginning of the series is shown to have this blue aura, as we see with Isagi, Bachata, and Kunigami, each having this blue-like aura. However, once a player comes to understand their ego, whether it be through an awakening or unlocking of a new technique, their aura color actually changes into what we know as the second stage of ego manifestation, characterization. Now this second stage of ego changes the blue smoke aura to another color that coincides with the character. If you're curious as to how we can identify the aura colors that each character will have when they reach this stage of their ego evolution, you can take a look at the manga volume covers to find the answer. If you look at the BLUELOCK manga covers, you'll see that each character is shown with a solid color background. That background represents their ego character color. And we can deduce this by looking at Bachata's awakening, where he awakens his ego and it changes from blue to yellow. And the final stage of ego manifestation is called object manifestation. In this final form, we see the auras of characters take on physical shape as opposed to the simple smoke aura. Now the smoke aura will remain present at some points in the series, however in other times of the series, the aura is shown as some kind of creature or object. Examples of this include Hiyori's Shattered Glass, Bachata's Monster, Nagi's Death Reaper, and Shido's Demon Wings. Some characters also have two object manifestations, seen with Isagi having puzzle pieces and twin pistols, Kaiser having thorny vines and flower petals, and Bado with his lightning and a lion. And we also know that some characters actually awaken a new unique aura style when they enter flow. This was shown with Rin developing this destructive corpse-like aura as opposed to his traditional water aura. But with that, that was the explanation of ego in BLUELOCK. I hope you guys did enjoy this video and will leave requests for future videos down below in the comment section. I also wanted to announce that myself and Raven Geeks, another awesome BLUELOCK content creator, have made a Discord server. If you guys are interested in joining that server, I left the link to it down in the description below. For the question of the video, which ego manifestation is your favorite? Leave me your thoughts down in the comment section below. And like always, thank you all for watching, like and subscribe for more content just like this.